Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we're sitting down with Robin Thorne. And Robin is the president and CEO of CTI, an engineering firm that provides environmental safety, compliance, and also construction management services. Robin is also the founder of Demo Chicks, a nonprofit organization that introduces girls and young ladies to non-traditional careers and empowers women in them. So in today's episode, we're going to talk with Robin about the process of going from a paper-based to a cloud-based business and why cloud computing is needed to grow your business and the importance that it is to small businesses and owners to be able to work from anywhere. So welcome, Robin. So grateful to have you on. I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about sharing this information.
That's awesome. Well, I think to start out, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think it looks like for a business to run with the right software and systems versus companies that haven't figured that out yet?
Well, I would say that the businesses run more efficiently. So it's nice to be able to open a file once you receive it, right? If you don't have the proper software, you might have challenges opening files. Another issue would be if you don't have like a PDF software, you can't make changes. So you might have to seek out a free service that you can only access 3 times within so many hours. And so if you have to make additional changes, you have to sit there and wait until you're able to make changes. So it just helps you to run more efficiently.
So what I'm hearing there is that sometimes freeware is not a better answer because you're gaining inefficiencies that you'd be better off spending a little bit of money on. Is that right?
Exactly.
Awesome. So in your particular case, how did investing in cloud technology alleviate the challenges that you had?
Well, the things that I mentioned were the challenges that we had. And so it just helped us to operate a lot smoothly. Plus you feel it's empowering, right? It's empowering when you're able to do the work, and it's kind of interesting because as a small business, sometimes people don't expect you to be able to operate efficiently, and I've had people come on board and they would use the freeware. And I would tell them, wait a minute, we have Adobe Pro. We can do anything with the PDF. And so it's exciting, and even when we share that with our staff, they're like, wow, that's great, because wherever they came from, maybe didn't have it. So I would say, believe it or not, having the right software is actually empowering.
That's awesome. So were there hurdles in making that transition or challenges that you encountered or were able to overcome or that were intimidating for you?
Yeah, actually, the biggest hurdle was me. Yeah, because so I had a software and we were operating professionally and efficiently, I thought, but it was just me. Like I was a solopreneur, and as I brought people on board, maybe to consult, I could create their email address. I mean, it was fine, right? And then when I finally decided to look into outsourcing IT, and he was trying to get me to in the cloud, it was uncomfortable, right? Because it was different. And I wanted everything to be on my PC. It's like, what does that really mean, being out on the cloud? And because I had set up my systems, everything was personal. So we had to go from personal to business. And then he was telling me each person we brought on board had to have their own license. And I'm like, well, that's money, So it was just things like the additional expenses that I wasn't accustomed to. And it didn't cost that much, but it was just, mindset, like getting beyond me. And then trusting that this person actually knew what they were talking about and what the systems they were introducing would actually work and help us to be more efficient.
Yeah, I love that. So, if you could share with the listeners, what are some tips or thoughts that you've had that you could share with others that are maybe a small business owner looking to make these types of changes like you already did? Is there any hints you could give them?
I would suggest that they do research independently of the person who's trying to sell them the service, right? Just to research and find out what other people are doing, like talk to other small business owners, because oftentimes sales folks may try to sell you more than what you need. And that was a concern of mine. Like, do we really need all of this, or do we really need that program? So it's important for them to understand what their needs are in terms of software, and talk to other people to get information from them.
Yeah, I think that's wise for sure. And I know, even in our software technology business, it's the same thing. We, usually analyze multiple solutions and get presentations and talk to customers and go through a pretty in-depth vetting before we make a large investment, because I'm sure, as you can attest, it's not just the cost of the software, but also your resources and the time and the wages that you have to pay to learn and get trained. And then if it doesn't work, then you're going to have to spend even more money to switch and to invest in something new and go back through it all over again, right?
Right.
So in your particular case, how did you handle rolling out new software systems in your small business?
Well, once I saw that having my IT outsourced, it was less responsibility for me. That's one less thing that I had to do. So we have employees who work off site, and our client doesn't pay. We have people who work off site, and our contract does not include IT support. So if we have IT issues, we have to be able to resolve them. And I wanted to show my client that we were a professional organization and we were able to deliver on the service. So I didn't need to show up trying to fix my employees' IT issues. It was better for me to be able to send someone who was a professional who knew exactly what he was doing. And so that was one of the, so a contract was one of the factors that contributed to me deciding to outsource.
Okay, and going through that journey of growing to where you mentioned the word solopreneur. I like that term. To actually having staff and other people that you needed to involve. You mentioned that you found that you were the bottleneck. Sometimes you had to get out of the way. Maybe dive a little bit deeper on that. How important was having cloud technology in helping you to work through that?
Well, having the cloud technology meant that I didn't always have to be involved, because they didn't have to ask me to send them a file or where is this filed. It was in SharePoint. That's what we use. We use the SharePoint system. So we have a filing system where things are categorized and people have access to it. So they didn't have to wait to find out where documents were or wait for me to send them a document. They had access to it.
Well, it sounds like there was actually quite a good time savings of your own personal time as well, to not have to hand them and deliver everything to them and direct them in every case where they just had access on their own. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. And they had access to the latest version too.
Oh, there you go.
Check through your emails to see what was sent and when was it sent. And you know how you create documents and you call it version 1, version 2, version 3. And people still mess that up, right? But being able to go into SharePoint, you know that the document there is the latest and the greatest.
Yeah, so you're saying if there's a change order or something, somebody's not accidentally working off of the old version. Is that right?
That's if everyone is following the protocol, right? Because there's a human factor, so there's a chance for error. But we set up the systems in a way to make it more efficient. And we have to train people and retrain people. And then there's someone that has to do a quality check to make sure that the files are being filed properly.
Okay, so you're talking about collaborating with people on your team, but it also sounds like there might be value in what you can share with external folks like your customers. Is that right?
Well, one of the things that we were able to do is we have subcontractors that work on certain projects. And instead of having to email back and forth with them, we're able to create a new folder and give them access to only that folder so they don't have access to all our other intellectual property, and interact with them so there's no emailing back and forth. The files are stored there. And sometimes the issue is that the file is large and it's difficult to email something large, or we're sharing photos. So we can provide our subs with access to a folder and be able to work with them more efficiently as well.
Yeah, that's nice. So are there some other examples of where technology really helped you to keep a project going when you ran into issues? Any examples you could share?
Well, there was an incident where I was giving a speech back in my alma mater, Drexel University, give them a shout out.
Nice.
And and I was working on my speech on my laptop. And so I decided to stay on campus overnight, at the hotel. And I left my laptop at home. And I was thinking, wow, I wasn't finished my speech. I need to read over what I wrote. And I was able to use my mother's iPad to log into the cloud to access my speech. And that was amazing. I said, this made it all worthwhile.
Yeah, that's a great example. Actually, you're not only, like you mentioned, not only more current versions of things, but even for your own self, right? Where that cloud has just right where you left off at the last moment, as opposed to trying to back something up or email something to yourself or go through those other steps. So that's a great example. Any other like job application side of things that come to mind?
Well, one of the things I think is really important, as a safety company, we do site inspections. And this is something that we're working to perfect, because I always think there's always a human factor. You have to consider that with technology. And so if I have an inspector out on site and for some reason he loses the documentation, because sometimes what people will do, they'll have a checklist and a paper checklist, and they're checking off and they're recording their inspection there. But it's better to have an electronic device, the iPad or a tablet, and be able to enter the information and upload it in real time. And so whether that inspector makes it home, they decide to run off to Tahiti or wherever, we still have the documentation. Because it's nothing like telling a client, oh yeah, we were out at your site, we did the inspection, but we lost all the paperwork. Can we come out again?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So do you feel like that has helped you to win additional business or look better for a client? I mean, are there some examples where just because of this type of technology adoption, it really blessed your business in other ways than just that one particular situation?
Well, it's a competitive advantage. It's something that we can sell, because when we're out marketing, there's always what sets you apart from everyone else. And we can sell that as one of our competitive advantages, is that something that we can offer.
So you're actually marketing that you use these type of technologies, and because of that, you're actually a better service provider for your customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So as we know, and you've alluded to a little bit, technology and software systems, they're not, some of them are cheap, but some of them certainly aren't. So how does somebody measure the benefits or the ROI for systems like these before they take that plunge and make sure that they actually get that return on their investment?
Well, for us, it wasn't really an issue of measuring the return on investment. It was something that was done out of necessity. It's like you either operate efficiently or you struggle. You either, try to send this large file, or you go to Dropbox, or, you how do we send this? Do you use this system? Do you use that system? No, you share it. Right. So I think it was more just out of necessity, and it just made sense. And when I look back on it, it's not that big of an expense. One of the challenges for me, like I said, I had to get out of my own way. Each time someone came on board, we had to pay a monthly fee. But it's not that big of a monthly fee, right? So for them to have access to the Office 365, for them to have access to Adobe Pro, it's just the cost of doing business. You know, we're a small operation. We're about 13 employees, so we have 13 licenses. But it pays for itself over and over and over. Because initially I used to think, well, does that person really need Adobe Pro? You know, do they need a full license? No, we need to make sure that all of our people are fully equipped at any given time if they need any of the software. And that's just a decision that I made after I saw how easily it was to function, you know, with these services or with these with the software.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old adage, tripping over dimes to pick up pennies. Sometimes we look at it that way, and what you're saying is, no, those you're passing the pennies so you can pick up dimes. Is that right?
And that's what I'm saying. Absolutely.
So within, it sounds like you've brought up, you know, Adobe, you've got Dropbox. I mean, I think just casually speaking about this, I heard you mention at least 5 or 6 different solutions. Are there any that you still use today that are installed systems, or is your whole business online?
Oh, that's funny too, because part of the transition was because remember when you used to actually install programs on your computer now, so everything's in the cloud. That was a tough one. All of our programs are in the cloud. So you don't have to get the latest version, right? You don't have to go out and buy and install. They're all in the cloud. There's nothing that's loaded on our computers. I mean, we have one employee and they just went into the cloud. One employee about 3 years ago when we hired him, we purchased the software. And then when we renewed last year, it was a different version and it was a cloud version. So even they're in the cloud. So no, all of our software is pretty much in the cloud. And when I mentioned Dropbox, because early on, that's what we used. And, you know, my IT tech, he tells me, you don't need any of those things. But sometimes it's hard to let go, right? It's hard to let go if you're accustomed to using Dropbox and some of the other programs where you store all your documents.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's interesting. It sounds almost like on this discussion, you discovered, oh wait, we are in fact entirely on the cloud, and maybe it happened right underneath your feet, and you almost didn't realize it. Is that right?
I didn't realize it. I'm thinking, wow, that's true. And when he told me, I'm thinking, how can Word be in the cloud and my documents are on my computer? It just was. And then I said, you know what? He's a professional. He knows what he's doing. He's vetted. Like, he's been doing this for years. Just trust the process. Okay, but one thing, I did not want to let go of my desktop. Now, I do have a laptop, but I just said, I don't want to have to carry my laptop with me all the time. What if I don't want to carry it? And so I was determined to keep my desktop. He tried to take it from me, and I was like, no. So we all do have laptops. I have a laptop, but I just don't want to carry it all the time.
Yeah, fascinating. I've noticed that in my life too. Everything that I have is mobile. Everything that I have is in the cloud. So there's just, it's hard to buy on-premise enterprise software anymore that could even be installed, even if you wanted to. So what about printing? I mean, is this type of technology adoption allowing you to not have to print so many things like you may have had to do in the past?
I actually like to print. I don't like to print like 100-page documents. I don't like to print 100-page documents, but I do like to print to proofread. And also, when you think about ergonomics, just being on the computer all the time, sometimes I look at my staff and I say, how can I get them off of the computers? Because that's all we do, right? All day we're on the computers. You got the carpal tunnel issues. You got things going on. And so I actually encourage them to print things sometimes, to read, to proofread especially. But other than that, it works with the technology because another thing that we're wireless in the office, right? And I didn't know you could be wireless in the office. You have to have the wires coming out of the walls. Not necessarily like our phones are wireless inside the office and the printing's wireless. It's just amazing how much, can happen out in the cloud.
Yeah, that's another great example of the benefits that this type of technology provides to us. So I think one thing I'm hearing is that you've mentioned, trust the process and recognize that you're often dealing with professionals, even if they're in sales, they might be trying to sell you an upgraded module or something, potentially a little more than you might require immediately. But if you're vetting things properly and you put a little bit of trust in the technology side of things, it sounds like it's been a blessing for your business, and you recommend that others do the same. Is that kind of where you're landing on this?
Absolutely. And you also have to think about where you're going, because that was one of the challenges. He kept saying, well, when your folks are doing reports out in the field and they need to upload them to the cloud. And at the time, nobody was really doing the reports out in the field. And I was like, oh, we don't need to do that. It's okay. It's all right. We don't have as many people as your other clients, so we're good with the paperwork. And look at where I am today. Everything that he told me 2 years ago, we're doing it. So the expectation as a small business is that you're going to grow. So you may have to grow into your software, but just don't overdo it, because there's outside of the cloud. I mean, there's the CRM, there's project management software. There's all this software that I felt the time we spent trying to manage it would be wasting time. So at this point, like, we don't need all of that software. So just knowing what you need and what you'll need maybe in a year so you can grow into it, as opposed to just having all this software just to have it. And it really doesn't help you because it takes more time to figure it out, or you're forced to use it. Like, if you have a CRM, if you have a Salesforce with a CRM and you need that, or can you use an Excel spreadsheet for now? Like, what is it that you need?
Yeah, that's great advice. I think one of the other things that I'm hearing you say is that there should be some kind of a reasonable expectation on not just cost, but the timeline. And can you talk about that just a little bit more?
Yeah, and it depends on the type of business you do, because our projects don't have 15 steps, or the steps aren't all laid out. Like, one step is predicated on the previous step. So we may not be able to lay them all out. So some of the software, project management software, requires that you lay out all the steps and the timelines and so on and so forth. But that doesn't always work for us. And wanting to appear professional or be efficient, we try to use them, and I struggle with it. Like, why isn't this working? Well, the types of projects that we have, that's not the type of software we could use. So just being mindful of the application and if it really applies to your business.
Yeah, lots of great nuggets of wisdom here. We've really appreciated having you on to discuss these. So as a takeaway, is there one main point that you hope people walk away with from listening to our discussion today?
I would say be open to change. Be open to change, but also be wise, right? Don't change for the sake of change, but do it because you're ready to grow. There's a need for it. If your systems are archaic, just be open to having someone show you a new way of operating and making your operations more efficient. Just be open-minded and get out of your own way.
Oh, that's great stuff. So a couple quick questions before we wrap up, if you're all right with it. What's one thing that you're grateful for in your professional life?
I would say all the opportunities that are being presented to me. I mean, I worked very hard over the years. And one of the things I always say is that you have no control over the result. Like, you don't know when the results are going to come or when the win is going to come. But I'm seeing like years of work and networking and blood, sweat, and tears. And my phone is just constantly ringing. opportunities are popping up and we're landing contracts. And so I would say I'm seeing the fruit of my labor. So I'm really excited about that. The hard work is paying off.
Well, that's awesome. I love that. So to wrap up, last question. What is Robin's superpower when you put your cape on before you get ready to do something cool? What do you feel like that strength is for you?
I would say that my superpower is caring and being concerned for others, because it's not always about the dollar. Like, that's not always the bottom line. When you look at people that you do business with, you look at people that we employ, they're people first, right? And we want to interact and do business with people that we feel good about, right? People that have integrity, people who are honest. So I always share with my team that every opportunity isn't the best opportunity. Like, everything that glitters isn't gold. And with my employees, I tell them that what's most important, yes, we want them to come to work. We want them to be efficient and all of that, but we also want them to be able to take care of their families, because that's what's important. So if your kid has a soccer game, get your work done, but go to that soccer game. Like, don't be afraid to take time off, right, to spend with your family. So money's good, but people are important as well.
That's awesome. Well, I love that. And it's been really fun getting to know you and having this conversation today. We're so grateful that you joined us. And I hope that your message will inspire and resonate with others that are either in your boat or working towards being in the boat that you're in. And so thanks again for joining us.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share all of the things that I've learned along the way. I hope that it helps someone.
Fantastic. You bet. All right. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.